Alrighty, everyone. Today we're going to talk about jQuery and how we can install it into our web pages. And let's take a look. Now, jQuery is a library essentially of different JavaScripts or JavaScript pieces of code, I guess you could say. Right? I want to say JavaScript scripts, but that sounds redundant. But you know what I mean. So it's a library of different scripts that are already pre-done. And you can kind of customize them to whatever you need for your particular website. It's pretty easy to learn, and the nice thing about it is it makes the programming aspect of it simple. So you're not writing code from scratch. You're just taking kind of like blocks. You're using them however you might need to use them for your website. And so some of the advantages of jQuery include you can like normally what you do if you're writing it straight from JavaScript, it might be big blocks of code. Where now you can just turn it into a single line of code that you just refer to the JavaScript that is stored somewhere else. So you can easily add some different effects, some different slides. I'll show you some of those. And it lets you manipulate your HTML and your the DOM, your document object model. And it works in every browser. It works in Safari, it works in Chrome, it works in, I don't know, Opera. Not that really anyone even uses that anymore. Uses Internet Explorer, maybe, I'm assuming. All right, so that's good. So cross-browser compatibility is a big thing nowadays. You want to add jQuery to your sites. There's two different ways you can do it. One is you can just go to jQuery.com and download it, and then upload it to whatever your web host is. If you're using a web host, or you can refer to a jQuery from a CDN, a content delivery network, which is someone else holds the jQuery, and that way you just kind of like link to it, and whenever you need to call on it, then it'll be there. So that has some advantages to it. Both have ups, pros and cons, but we'll get into those in a second. So if you wanted to install jQuery by yourself, you go to jQuery.com. You don't want the production version. There's two versions. There's the production version and then there's the development version. The production version is pretty much like the standard version, and it's minified and compressed, meaning it will take up less space essentially, and so that makes things run a little bit smoother. Now, the downside to that is if you actually try to get in the code and find certain parts and you wanted to change it, it's kind of hard to find certain things, or it's hard to read as a human being. The computer doesn't care, all right? You could have like no spaces and everything. The computer doesn't matter. It's just code. But as a human being, you want to be able to read it. That's just the way we think about things. The way we organize our thoughts and the way the syntax for us. We need to make the code more representative of something that we can understand. So that's what you'd use the development version for. So if you were going to customize some of the code inside the jQuery, you'd probably want to use the jQuery version where it's uncompressed and easy to read. Again, it's not something you normally want to do, but you could come up, if you get into some advanced things. Now you're going to put the jQuery in your site's head. So if you're working on a website and inside the head where normally you have like the metadata and the link to your CSS and all that kind of stuff, you'd also put a couple script tags, script source, like where is our jQuery located. In this case, it's just located in the root directory, and it's called jQuery 321 minimized JS JavaScript. So you could put it in a folder or something like that. Like say you put it in a jQuery folder, it would be jQuery / jQuery 321 blah blah blah. Then you put your closing script. All right. If you want to use a CDN, and this is what I don't want to say, I guess what you most commonly do is you're going to use a CDN. So it's faster as a visitor, right? Because a lot of CDNs are pretty popular. Like the Google one is probably the most popular one, I'm assuming. And so if they've already been to a website that uses the same CDN as the one that you're using, then it will already be essentially be preloaded, so it will run quickly for them. Let me see. So if you wanted to put a link to a CDN into your website, and here the example that we have is the Google one. There's other ones besides Google, but like I said, Google is probably the most commonly used one. Again, you put it in the head, and you have a script source, and here instead of having like the previous, you just like wherever your file is located. Here we have it's located at an actual like at a website somewhere if you want to think about that. So it's HTTPS, and the S is for secure, ajax.google.apis.com, and then a bunch of stuff. All right, and then we have our jQuery minimize.js. We have our closing script tag. So essentially the same as we had it before, right? It's just a more detailed location because we're linking to somewhere externally, all right? But it'll still work essentially the same way. Now, the only downside of this is you can't really customize it so much as far as getting into the nitty gritty of the code. But there's a lot of things you can do as far as customizing it with the HTML and the CSS. So that's I wouldn't worry about it too much. And normally I would recommend using a CDN, and that's what we'll do in our sample exercise. So if you wanted to put this like in a code pen, all right, you leave the HTML, the CSS, and the JavaScript, and you could search for the jQuery link, and basically you'll just put that in script tags inside the HTML. Or like I said, I'll show you another thing you can do, where you can just search for it and paste the link straight into it. All right, so the syntax for jQuery is like this, right? So it's gonna be $, then in parentheses whatever your selector is, then dot, and then action, and then more parentheses. So let's take a look at each of those things. So the $, just says if your browser sees $, it's going to access in jQuery. And then the selector is like what it is that the jQuery is going to try to find, essentially. Like, is it going to be a paragraph tag? Is it going to be something else? And then the action is like what you want jQuery to do. Right? So again, jQuery has a bunch of predefined things that you can call upon, and in the example we have down below, we're using the hide action. So in the first example, we have $this, so whatever the current element is that we're on, it could be a paragraph, could be an H1, could be whatever. All right, it will hide it when certain things happen. All right. And then I can't even talk. The second example, we have paragraph. You see that the paragraph is inside quotation marks. So it will hide all paragraph elements. The third one is anything with a class of test will be hidden. And the last one, anything with an ID of test will be hidden. And again, all these, if you want specific elements, you're going to go ahead and put them in quotation marks. This and other things like without the quotation marks, those are jQuery specific things that we want to use to select certain things that aren't necessarily elements. They're more generic in a way. So you're going to put your jQuery methods in a document ready event, a DRE. We talked about document ready events when we talked about JavaScript. Essentially, it just says your jQuery won't run before your document is finished loading, which could lead to some weird errors sometimes. So this is the way it looks. So you have your $, document. So this is like what the jQuery is going to be looking for. Remember, $, just says start the jQuery, document, like the whole your website essentially. Dot ready. So when it's ready, run some function, and then you go ahead. You're going to put in your function or whatever jQuery methods you want inside of that. jQuery selectors. All right, you can manipulate HTML elements. So here we have a $, we have a paragraph inside quotation marks and inside parentheses. That would select all paragraphs. This would select all paragraphs with a class of intro. This one, you see it's in brackets too, selects all elements with an href attribute. That could be a tags, most common one. This one would select all table rows with that are odd, so like the first, the third, the fifth, and so on. in the example we have here, we have our document rotary event up top, and then inside of that, then we have our jQuery. So when the button is clicked, anything with a class of test is hidden. So here we have an H2 as a class of test. Okay, all right, that'll get hidden. This paragraph has a class of test. That will get hidden. This paragraph over here does not have a class of test. So when we click this button down here, this paragraph over here will not get hidden. All right, the precise moment when something happens is a jQuery event. And when we're talking about jQuery, of course. All right, when it's called being fired, so the jQuery event fires. So it could be moving a mouse over something, like hovering over something. It could be selecting a radio button. It could be clicking on something, such as a button or something else, or a paragraph even. So whenever you do whatever, it's going to trigger the jQuery. That's called the firing the jQuery event. All right. So this is the syntax for event methods. Like how are you gonna fire off your jQuery? Here we've got paragraph, all right, $, which is gonna start your jQuery. Then we have our paragraph. Whenever a paragraph is clicked, right, then we'll do something. All right, all paragraphs in your document object model in your document will do something when you click on them. All right, and then it depends on whatever you put inside your parentheses here. Could be hide, could be something else. So to determine what happens after the click, you pass the function to the event. Right. So this is what it would look like, and down here is where you would actually put your function. Here are some common events that you can use. All right, there's a click, a double click. Click is one time on your mouse. On the left button, double click is 2 times, of course. Mouse enter, when a mouse enters a certain area or an element. Mouse leave, when a mouse leaves a certain area. Sometimes you'll combine these two things, like maybe you have when the mouse enters a certain area, maybe a background shadow will pop. It's cat's knocking things over. And when the mouse leaves a certain area, you hear me talking about mice. Is that what it is, Sparkles? All right. When the mouse leaves a certain area, then then the background shadow will go away or something like that. So, key press. So when you hold, like say you could make it when you press the the shift button or the L button or whatever like that, something happens. And when you key down is that will be the difference between key press and key down is the key press is just while it's pressed. Key down is like after you. So key press, sorry, is when you press it, it happens, right? Key down is as long as you're holding the button down, that's when it happens. If you let go of it, right, key up, essentially, when you let go of it, then the event will stop. And the opposite for key up. Form events, these are things you can use in different forms. Submit, change, focus, and blur. A document window event, so when the document loads, when the document gets resized, when you scroll in the document, or when the document is unloaded. Do different things. I think that's it, right? Yeah. That's right. Sparkles added this tab yesterday, or this window over here. So that's all